recording now, I think. Little thing in the top there. Yeah, recording pending.
Yeah, that's come through now.
Okay, right. Let's get started then. Hopefully it's nice and sunny where you are. So we've got a bit of blue sky here, but it's usually cloud, but then it is Newcastle, so any blue sky is a bonus. Welcome everyone. I'm Mark Buckley. I'm the head of sales at the CSA. My job role is basically to be responsible for bringing in apprenticeships. So we deal with everything from the initial inquiry stage up to the enrolment, which was then dealt with by a learning and development team. I also deal with new members, bringing them on board, and also dealing with our events as well. So things like our L&D conference, which was earlier this year and last year. And I know a couple of apprentices that some of the attendees have here today attended that, and also other events throughout the year. L&D, the apprenticeships, does take up the vast majority of my time. So, which is good because it shows that we're doing something rather well, I think. Also, I appreciate that I'm looking in this direction, and so most of you have, thankfully, my best side profile. You definitely don't want to look at the left-hand side of my face, but that's because my camera's in my laptop and I'm looking at the big monitor because it's easier to see things and deal with things that way, rather than me pivoting around like this all the time because there's not too much space there. I'm going to share my screen and go through the presentation with you, so there'll be some slides. If you give me a second. So, oops. Can people see that?
Yeah, can see that.
Brilliant. Oh, yeah, there we go. Right, I can't see anyone now because I've gone to full screen. So I'm just going to work my way through this. Bit of a brief introduction will be happening today. Then I'll go through the background of the CSA and the RCO apprenticeship itself, the enrolment and induction process, what the learner needs to do. It says questions at the end there, but what I'm happy for people to do is ask questions as we go. Now, because I can't see people and I can't see the chat, I'm happy for people to interrupt by speaking. It's not a problem at all. Otherwise, I may miss the question, or if people are happy to leave questions till the end, please do. But usually when I've done this, it's flowed better when questions are asked when they're being thought of. So whichever you feel most comfortable with. Okay. So who are the CSA? Let's say I'll give you the level 4 RCO story and where we are with that and where we're looking at going with it. The CSA is the National Trade Association for the debt collection and debt purchase industry. So stereotypical training provider, really, particularly for apprenticeships. We've been around for well over 100 years. We're not for profit. It's a membership-led organisation, and everything that we make goes back into ensuring that those members are represented properly. But we've also been providing training for about 35 years of various guises, looking at responsibility for credit control and collections, compliance, financial risk and compliance. Those areas are the areas that we concentrate on. And when the new standards came in 2017 and the lead up to those, we thought, well, we've been doing training delivery, we'd like to have a look at that. We applied for OTAP, we were accepted first time, and we started delivering apprenticeships in round about October 2017. In the lead up to the apprenticeship standards coming in, we were involved with quite a few of the standards that we deliver in either the design and formatting of them or being there as an expert or a specialist with regards to the content of some of them. So we look at concentrating on the level 2 and level 3 credit control and collections, the level 3 compliance and risk officer, level 6 senior compliance and risk specialist, the level 4 RCO, which is what today is about, and also the level 4 counter fraud investigator apprenticeship as well. And as it says there at the bottom, we have a very decent track record of delivering apprenticeships and training. The level 4 RCO story itself, going to look at the delivery, the employer learning numbers, cohorts and achievement rates. As I say, if there's any questions during this, please ask. So the level 4 RCO, we started delivering this in September 2018. We've been working in conjunction with Phil Owens and Rob Taylor with the CTSI and trading standards, and working closely with them to get this to the market, and working with local authorities. Our first cohort was mainly local authorities, but there was a couple of NHS employers in there as well. We deliver the apprenticeship using a fully blended approach, which is the same approach we use for all of our apprenticeships. So bi-monthly workshops, which is one full day once every 2 months, because I appreciate bi-monthly can mean twice a month, but no, it's once every 2 months. There's monthly one-to-one sessions with the coach or tutor. There's quarterly review meetings with the coach, the learner and their line manager, so we can see how they're progressing against the KPIs that are set at the start of the apprenticeship. There's assignments and coursework and presentations between the workshops that the learner needs to do. And there's also the 20% off the job requirement, which the employer needs to allow the learner provision of. So the workshops, the one-to-one sessions, the quarterly review meetings, they all contribute towards that requirement. Things like shadowing, attending conferences, doing a project, that's not necessarily part of the assignments. We can work in conjunction with the employer as well to look at providing what's actually a work-led project, and that can contribute towards the off-job requirements and the content of the portfolio. There's lots of ways that 20% off the job requirement can be met without compromising the efficiency and productivity of the learner within their day-to-day job. We are happy to offer advice and guidance as to how that can be met. The employers that we've had and the apprenticeships that we've been delivering for the last 3.5, nearly 4 years, there's been a couple of employers where they've had difficulty with that, but 99.9%, it's once they've understood and exactly how it can work, it's not been an issue generally. And then, of course, at the very end, there's the endpoint assessment, which is mock discussion, looking at portfolio and everything as well. The bi-monthly workshops, at the moment, we're currently delivering everything remotely. So that's either via Teams or Zoom, whichever platform is the most convenient for everyone within the cohorts. If face-to-face requirements do come back from the ESFA, which at some point they will do once COVID settles down, if it settles down, we'll bring the face-to-face requirements back in during the monthly one-to-ones and the quarterly reviews, and we will come to the learners for those or meet them if they're in the far off flung place of East Suffolk on the coast or somewhere. We could meet a little bit further inland or what have you. Otherwise, if it's convenient, we will come directly to yourselves as well. Does anyone have any questions on that at the moment? Good. There's 8 modules throughout the delivery. I won't go through all of this. We can send the delivery plans and everything to you as well if you want them. But these are what's covered in each module throughout, and then the assignments and coursework will be related to what's covered in the modules. Apologies if there's too much background noise at the moment. The assignments and coursework are related to that individual's job. So even if you have a cohort where there's 10 different job roles within that, so for example, a licensing officer or an animal health or health inspector or enforcement, traffic ward, anything like that, the regulations, what the modules covered in the workshops, it's general best practice guidelines of how to apply regulatory compliance, and then the work that you do is relevant to that role. So the learner will be doing it in relation to their job. It doesn't matter if John Smith who sits next to them at the workshop is doing a completely different job. They would be doing their own thing. So it works very well. It also works very well in the workshops because I could ask a question that Jane had not thought of, and Jane could ask a question that Peter had not thought of, and yet it all helps contribute towards their understanding and development within the apprenticeship itself and helps them across the 16 months that we deliver this apprenticeship. Since we started delivering the Level 4 RCO, it has been our most popular apprenticeship. We've had 231 people start this apprenticeship since September 2018. Not everyone has finished for various reasons. Usually it's been they've got a new job, or there's been personal circumstances that meant the apprenticeship wouldn't be done to 100%. But as you can see there, we've also had 79 different employers use us for the Level 4 RCO, of which 54 of those different employers have been either local authority or public sector. So you can see there's quite a focus to that area with regards to employers taking on this apprenticeship. Cohorts themselves, they are scheduled on a regular basis. We've already had 6 cohorts start this year alone. 3 of those were for one employer, which was a governmental department. There's another 3 already scheduled for the second half of the year. Now these, apart from the 3 that are in the first 6, the other 3 and the 3 that are scheduled for later in the year, they're open cohorts. So that's where employers don't have the minimum number of learners themselves. So they've got 1s and 2s, and we can combine them into cohorts. The requirement of numbers per cohort, the minimum number we would look at having for any cohort, be it open or closed, is around about 6 or 7, because that sort of helps with the learning experience. People can bounce off one another, as I mentioned before. Also as well, people don't get, it's not too full on if there's a few numbers, so it doesn't look as though it's right. I'm being asked a question again. Yes, there's only 3 of you, so I've got to ask you. Whereas if there's 6 or 7, it's spread out a bit more. And then we also go to a maximum of 15, because any more than that, the learners can get lost within the numbers as well. So we look at going between 6 or 7 and a maximum of 15. We feel that's the ideal numbers for any cohort, be it open or closed on that basis. Does anyone have any questions on the last couple of screens at all?
Mark, can I just ask, I'm sure you'll provide them to us later on down the line, but have you got the dates handy for the 3 that are scheduled for autumn winter this year?
End of September is the first one, and then it's very end of October and mid-November. Those are the 3 that are currently scheduled. We can put in more if the numbers mean that what we've already got scheduled would mean they'd hit their maximum. So those are the ones that are currently there, end of September, very end of October and mid-November, but we will be able to put more in. We're not going to look at anything before the second half of September for 2 reasons. One, August is quite a difficult time to get people to get their paperwork back for holidays, etc. as well. So even though we've got COVID, people will still be having breaks away from work. And also as well, we have our annual conference this year in September, and that's going to be an in-person event. So it's going to be all guns blazing on that and all hands to the deck, and any other cliche I want to fit into that sentence for that in the first half of September. So what we want to do is ensure that there's sufficient time between that and the cohort starting in the second half of September to ensure that all the admin is up to date. Everyone's got what they need from the employer and learner end as well, so no one misses out and no one's left behind. So it would be from the second half of September that any cohort would be added.
And the conference, is that for sort of learners and employers, or?
Well, we do have learners can come. It's for employers as well. We are looking at certain things in there for people in performance. So it's not just about credit control and collections. It's not just about regulatory compliance or compliance and risk. We're looking at people performance, looking at getting the best out of them, out of staff, looking at post-pandemic recruitment, other things like that as well. I can send the agenda across to people. It is in Newcastle, so it's a little bit of a trek from East Anglia and the southeast, but it's a lovely part of the world. We do have an apprentice ticket price where it's only £75 for the apprentices, if they're current apprentices, to attend. if they wanted to. And I can get the ticket prices for non-apprentices out to people as well if people wanted to attend.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
No problem. No problem at all.
I've just got a quick question on the 3 cohorts, if that's okay. I'm conscious that we've got representatives from county council authorities and also unitary authorities, and what they might be looking for in terms of a qualified apprentice might be quite different. And these 3 cohorts, I was wondering if there's any opportunity before they start to kind of express an interest in a particular focus on any modules that might be useful. I think, unitary authorities might be looking for a more generally qualified officer, whereas county councils might be looking for a more sort of TS specific lean in their apprenticeship. That might not be the case for everyone, but generally I've kind of noticed that trend speaking to officers in the region. Is there any opportunity, I suppose I'm asking, to influence the focus on any of those cohorts that might be starting later on this year?
That would be dependent on numbers and when they could start, Ben. It's I mean, with regards to the content, that we have to deliver what the standard states, and we can adapt that. So, for example, 3 of the cohorts that we started early this year, they were for DEFRA, or department within DEFRA. And what we did was we liaised with them and we tailored some of the approach to fit what that department within DEFRA would be focusing on. So we can do that and we can tailor it. Obviously, there's there's already the setup within the delivery that what the learners do with their assignments, their coursework, if they're working to a certain point or certain angle, that would be focused on the work that they do. So they take the principles from the workshop and apply it to that, and the coach would work with the learner and the employer from that perspective as well, Ben. So there's a couple of ways it can be done, but yes, subject to numbers and how many that would be, we can look at tailoring it. We can look at making it a bit more specific. We can, if there's, say, a minimum number of 6 or 7 from a couple of different employers, but they're working towards the same end goal, we can look at creating a closed cohort for them, in addition to these 3 that are already there, and working it from that way as well, Ben. So we can adapt in conversation with employers. So yes, that wouldn't be an issue at all if they didn't want to go down the open cohort route.
That's brilliant, thanks. And then just as you said there, where you've got DEFRA, who've kind of they've got the numbers to have their own cohort. If we were able to do that in the east of England, say next year, if we had expressions of interest of say 8-10 people who wanted to undergo the RCO apprenticeship, would we then be able to approach you about setting up our own cohort? Is that something you'd be happy to work with
Yes,
us on?
it's something we've done for ITSA before. So one of the cohorts, beginning of last year, end of the year before, I've lost track with where we are after after the last 15-18 months. But yes, there was a specific ITSA only cohort. It was based in London. It was back in the days when people could travel. But yes, we could do. We've done it before. And we can do it again. That's not a problem at all.
Great, thanks a lot.
No worries. I'm going to look at it, just quickly cover our achievement rates. So level 4 RCO, achievement rates are 79.5%. So achievement rates, for those of you that don't know, achievement rates are calculated basis of everyone who starts, and then you've got to take into account leavers, people who are still on course before reaching EPA, other things like that, as well as it's quite a complicated calculating way of doing it. But at the moment, we're about 79.5%. Overall, our achievement rates are 71% over all the apprenticeships that we deliver. But the national average, as you can see, on achievement rates is 58.7. So we're well ahead of the national average in all respects. Pass rates are where someone has got through the apprenticeship and has completed their endpoint assessment. So it doesn't take into account leavers. It's just looking at the people who finished the apprenticeship and have done the endpoint assessment. So our pass rates are 100% on the level 4 RCO, 99% overall. It's only down at 99% because one learner refused to rewrite an assignment, so we couldn't pass them, even though that assignment wasn't sufficiently good enough. And the national average is 97.5. And our retention rates as well. Now, retention is people who stay on course. Again, we're looking at I mentioned before about people who've left because they've changed jobs or personal circumstances. Our retention rates are still very high at 84%, which, as you see, when you compare to the national average of retention rates, we're well ahead of that. Where next with the RCO? Obviously, we're going to continue delivering level 4 RCO. We are growing that. We're getting a lot of repeat business from existing employers. We're going into new areas with different employers as well coming on board. We've increased our what's the word I'm looking for? Visibility on different procurement portals. We're liaising with different networks as well with regards to level 4 RCO. Going to be at the CTSI symposium in Birmingham in September, end of September. So we'll be having a stand there and also hopefully doing a seminar on the Tuesday as well to discuss the level 4 RCO. So we're growing that. Because it is the most popular one, it makes sense to do that. And there's also discussions with regards to what's currently nicknamed the RCO 2, which will be a level 5 or level 6 apprenticeship. It's just looking at going a little bit further, a little bit more specific down the trading standards route of the level 4 RCO. So with the, as I mentioned before, level 4 RCO, having people from dental hygiene to what have you, as long as you've got a regulatory compliance requirement, the level 4 RCO is doable, whereas to concentrate more focusedly on the trading standards, the RCO 2 is looking down that avenue. More information will be coming, hopefully by the end of this year, all things being well, if not before. The enrolment and induction process. It's quite an in-depth enrolment and induction process. However, because it is so in-depth and we get the right information and we ensure that the learner is on the right apprenticeship, we know we're doing it properly because we can see that from the retention rates being so high. So what we do initially is we gather information, as it says there. So what we do is we send out what's called a skill scan form to every learner. So that learner, in conversation with their line manager, if it's an existing employee, if it's a new employee, it would have to come from the learner themselves, because the line manager won't have any frame of reference. And they score themselves out of 10 against each core knowledge, skill and behaviour that's covered by the apprenticeship standard. We provide some scoring guidance on that skill scan form, and it's imperative that that guidance is followed when they're scoring themselves against those areas. It's also imperative that it's answered as honestly as possible, because the information provided on that form is utilised in the enrolment call, and it also helps us gauge their eligibility for the apprenticeship itself. Now, the higher the score out of 10, the less likelihood there is of that learner being suitable for the apprenticeship, because apprenticeships are designed to show development and growth in knowledge and skills within that role across the 16 months that we deliver the level 4 RCO. If someone's scoring 7s, 8s, 9s out of 10, there's no room for development, really, on there, if those scores are accurate. And therefore, we shouldn't really be delivering that apprenticeship to you. We could take the levy funds, we could take that learner into a cohort, but it wouldn't be the right thing to do because they wouldn't be learning. It would be a waste of time. It wouldn't be a good thing for the other learners in the cohort, and it's not a proper use of the levy. We want to do it properly and accurately and ensure that the quality of delivery is maintained and not compromised in any way. However, saying that, if an average score of 6 or above in the knowledge and skills areas, we're not too concerned about behaviours because that's more personal rather than specific to a role. We would do what's called prior learning assessment forms with the learner. to see what learning they have done, see if those scores are accurate, and see if people, because as we've all done it, we want to make ourselves look good. So just think before, but I'll look better by putting myself down as a 6. We would also look at those conversations as well and go, well, actually, no, you are a 4. And that's what you should be marking yourselves at as well. And doing it that way. So we cover it off from every possible angle. Okay, because as I say, we need to ensure that learners are there for the right reasons. There's only one stipulation that we request from the learners to provide proof, and that is proof of functional skills. Now that is grade A to C, or I think these days that's 4 to 9, in both maths and English GCSE or O level. Now that could simply be a photo of their certificates showing their grade, or depending on their age, there could be a database that they're on if they can't have that certificate. If that proof of grade cannot be provided, or if they don't have those grades, then we would have to provide tutoring to them to get them up to a certain standard, and then they'd sit an assessment, which is about an hour long, in whichever subject it is they haven't provided the proof in, and then they can go on to complete their apprenticeship. It does not prevent them, not having proof of functional skills does not prevent them from starting the apprenticeship. The tutoring would run alongside the apprenticeship being done. Now, we state a maximum of 6 months to do the tutoring and the assessment. I'm not aware of anyone taking anywhere near that length of time who has had to do tutoring. Even people who've sat their GCSEs as long ago as I did, which is nearly 30 years ago, it's not taken anywhere near the 6 months. All learners, whether provided proof of functional skills or not, will be asked to sit what's called a BQSB test in both maths and English. It's about 15 minutes in duration for each one, and it just helps us gauge the current levels of where people are at with those abilities in those subjects. It's also classed as best practice by Ofsted that all learners take. That's why we do it. But the results of those BQSB tests will also help us gauge how we think what the amount of tutoring would be for those individuals if the proof of skills hasn't been provided. We also look at providing what's called a cognitive neurodiversity assessment, where that's about half an hour long, where the learner has their brain looked at, basically. 7 or 8 different areas there that helps us identify learning strengths for that individual, weaknesses as well, and also if there's any additional learning needs that may or may not have been identified before. And what we do is we then adapt the learning plan for that individual and help and utilize that information across the duration of the apprenticeship to help them through their apprenticeship. That information is also shared with the endpoint assessment organisation, whichever company that is. It's usually the ICA in the level 4 RCO. Lots of acronyms here. So that helps them through the EPA as well. All information with regards to the apprenticeship is stored on a learner management system, BUD. So the enrolment starts with BUD. All the details are put on there. Every bit of work that they do, everything off the job is logged on BUD. The coach and tutor have access to BUD. The learner has access to BUD. The line manager can have access to BUD to see if everything is being done on time. We can have observational access for others as well, if need be, if that's a requirement. But everything is logged on BUD. So you can see what's going on there. We can track the 20% off the job as well. The logging of the hours is put on BUD. Everything is done on there, and there's management information reports. We utilize the information there as well, the quarterly reviews, the monthly one-to-ones. It's a tracking system throughout the duration of the apprenticeship, basically. Does anyone have any questions with regards to this part of the process at all?
No.
No? Okay, I'll move on. Key principles, we covered a lot of them. So as I say, all contents aligned to the standard. So going back to your point, Ben, that's what we're referring to before. So we have to cover the standard, but we can link things in to it, as long as we utilise the standard as the core of the delivery of the apprenticeship. And as I say, the relevant KSBs there as well. The blended approach that I mentioned before in the delivery, it's built incrementally over the 8 modules, and I mentioned there, and each module includes a workshop, coursework of some format, and a reading list as well. So it's, you know what you're getting. All workshops are scheduled before the cohort starts, so each learner would know when they would need to be available for those workshop dates. They're not done on a bit by bit basis. Everything's scheduled beforehand. The monthly one-to-ones can be a bit more flexible. That would be in conjunction with the coach and the learner themselves. But the workshops are set in stone. And that is pretty much it. So any questions? I'll stop sharing now, I think, if I can. And welcome back to see people's faces again. Or have I wowed you enough and there's no questions coming forward?
Can you not turn around here?
Mark, it's Matthew.
Hi there.
Hi there,
Hi,
Matthew at Essex Trading Standards. Thanks ever so much for that. That was really quite helpful. And I think the lack of questions is a reflection of the fact that you've clearly covered it all off quite nicely for most people, and they now have got a very clear understanding of what's involved. I don't know whether this is really a question for you, Mark, or more over Ben, probably. We're just about to hopefully recruit 2 RCOs within the next couple of weeks. We've been to advert, so we're looking at going through the shortlisting and interviewing process very shortly now, and we want to get our new recruits on a course as soon as possible. So clearly the late September one is probably the one that we'd be looking to try and get ourselves involved in. But say, Ben, it might be more pertinent for you. Do we know, have we got a sort of tranche of 6, 7 or more trainees that are that close to being enrolled for the September module? Is it, and therefore is it one that can be shaped a little bit more to the trading standards subject areas?
I mean, I haven't had anything sort of concrete. I know, I think there might be another local authority or maybe other local authorities who are kind of in the same area as you, where you're just recruiting at the moment. I have heard that there are other people doing it, but I think, you know, it's possible that Mark might have more information on that than me. I've not had anyone sort of formally approach me to suggest a coordinated approach to the next cohorts, but certainly I'll be looking to do that as much as possible. And me and Mark have had a conversation prior to this presentation where, you know, I think it's going to be useful for everyone if I'm helping get each's ducks in a row, and then we try and coordinate a cohort or partial cohort, whatever the numbers are, to do that all together, and then I can act as a single point of contact between Mark and the region, to make sure that everything's sort of fully communicated and we're getting exactly what it is that we're looking for out of whatever cohorts we've got officers in. Yeah,
because obviously this is a completely new concept to me. I mean, I've trained 25 years ago, nearly 30 years ago now, so I did the DTS. It was all highly trading standards focused. You know, there wasn't an element of the subject really that wasn't related to trading standards. So the concept of it being this general at the beginning is a completely new one to me. And I don't even know on that basis whether there is a need for it to be a very trading standards focused cohort. But I guess it might help with the discussions if it was to be. So again, Mark, I don't know whether you've already got, for example, an idea of whether you've got other trading standards apprentices coming through and wanting to enrol on the September workshop.
We've got inquiries. Off the top of my head, don't think all of them are TS related. However, saying that, sorry, my tea's just been delivered. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you. Most of it's on the lid. But we have had mixtures, as I said before, where you have had, let's just make it easy enough, half and half, where half have been trading standards and half haven't. And because you've got people coming from a slightly different angle or perspective, it's actually helped from both ways as well. So if you've got people coming from a purely TS perspective, it's helped the people who aren't that focused, and vice versa, because if you're coming from a different angle, you're going to ask different questions, you're going to have a different thought process. So it actually broadens the spectrum of your thought processes be questioning why, and then you're just going, all right, can I apply that to this bit? Or would that be applicable? Or actually that's helping you with my thought for my TS angle, and I can tailor it this way, and things like that. It's not going to happen all the time, but it does work. However, saying that, we have had cohorts where it has been just specific to a particular angle, and that works just as well, because again, you still have those individuals who would ask a question that you may not have thought of, but it is specific to what you do. So it just depends what you'd be most comfortable with, or that individual may be most comfortable with as well. If someone's happy to have a broader spectrum, fine. If someone wants to know, this is the way I work, I want to have a focus on that, and I want everyone from that angle as well, that's fine too, and we can work that. We can look at scheduling that and creating cohorts accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
If I could just add one final thing to that, I think it's useful to consider the journey that you want, the overall journey that you want your apprenticeship, your apprentice to do. I think there's been a lot of really positive feedback for the RCO within EATSA so far, and it's complemented the CTSI competency framework really well. So I think what I will do, if Mark, you're happy with it, and if everyone in the region is happy with it, is to perhaps send out a questionnaire to all local authorities and just ask everyone to fill it out if they are looking to do an apprenticeship and the RCO apprenticeship from sort of September or whenever the next cohort might be, so we can then feed that back as a region to Mark to make sure that the kind of key areas that everyone wants to cover are there. Yeah, I can take that forward, and this presentation, as we've got it recorded, we can send that out to everybody else, and that'll be sort of part of the information process prior to feeding that information back to Mark. And I'm quite happy to take any suggestions on at this point for how best to do that, or if there's anything that you might need to consider in the process.
Joanne, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, we've got 3 apprentices going through at the moment, and one thing which is going to be a bit more hard work than it possibly needed to be coming up in the next few months is certainly how the end of the apprenticeship dovetails in with CTSI's exam cycle. So, for example, registration for stage 2 on CTSI needs to be in by the end of August. But the apprentices are not due to finish their apprenticeship till sort of November, December. So we're going to need to bring everything forward for them. So that's something to bear in mind when you're putting your apprentices on, when their EPA is going to finish, when they need to get their project in order for them to get their exam results back and be ratified by CTSI, in order to then sit their exams for their next subject in May, which they would have had to apply for in August. So that's a bit of a rattle, but that it's all in a very short space of time, that the timings need to be thought about when you're going to put your apprentices on in order to have them finish and give them enough time not to rush at the end for their EPA.
Yeah, the duration of the apprenticeship is 16 months. So there's 14 months training and 2 months EPA. So if you started in September, you would be finishing your training in November 22, and your EPA would be finishing January, February 23.
Yeah.
It's an idea of the timescales.
So if you're going to put a cohort on for trading standards, you just need to bear in mind that if you're going to go from, the end of RCO, because they'll be doing their fair trading criminal during that time, if you want them then to go on to food or safety and straight on learning, that you need to have everything in place before you can register them for stage 2, because with only one CTSI exam cycle now, you might end up with a big gap in the middle.
Thank you, Joanne. How do I take you? How do you put hands down? You can tell I've done Zoom too much. It's a team scares me. I think Alan had his hand up first, then Helen. So Alan.
Yeah, it's linked to Matthew, mentioned earlier on, we're going through the recruitment cycle now, and we're filtering out applicants. I thought it was quite interesting. You were talking about sort of the journey of the apprentice from what seems to be like a fairly low level up through, you know, the development kind of stage to a much higher level, obviously, by the time they're finished. We're looking to recruit, and obviously we want the highest caliber candidate we can, and we're talking about previous qualifications before they join us, i.e. A levels, potentially even graduates. Is there a sort of conflict, if you like, between having someone at that fairly high academic level and then going on the apprenticeship? Does it affect or
No,
impact in any way?
The scoring is done against the standard, the apprenticeship standard. So it's, unless they've got experience of doing everything within the standard, then their scores should be fairly low, because that's what they're scoring themselves against. So we've had people come straight from A levels, we've had people come straight from university into this, well, not just this apprenticeship, all of them, basically. And as it's all about the knowledge and understanding of the apprenticeship they're going into. So also, as well as from a wider perspective, it's a general perspective as well. So it's not just going into your employment and having knowledge of that, as well as looking at it from a broader perspective too. So the fact that they would have A levels, or the fact that they may have a degree, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. We've had people come into the level 4 RCO who've done a law degree, and I know there's some sort of there's laws covered within the RCO apprenticeship, and again, you just look at that module potentially and see if there's a conflict with regards to what law they've done as well, and that's where the prior learning assessment would come in, Alan. So we'd see it from that perspective. So if they score particularly high in that area, we'd go, okay, right, let's have a look at this and let's discuss this and see why. Just because they score high doesn't necessarily mean they can't do the apprenticeship. It's we would just have that conversation. And if someone scores 6 or 7s in a couple of areas, we look at the average score overall as well. So they could be scoring 2s and 3s in 7 out of 10 areas, just for argument's sake, and 6 or 7 in 3. So their average score would be 4 or 5. So it would be fine on that basis. Alan, does that help?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just, you know, I didn't know if there's sort of a general consensus around the room, really, as to sort of the level of qualification of candidates that they're bringing on and putting through the scheme. I don't know.
In Norfolk, we were advised by our HR that we shouldn't specify degree level for the apprenticeship. I think that's right, isn't it, John?
Yeah, we drafted a recruitment round with a stipulation of degree level education would be, I don't know if we mandated it or said it would be desirable, but our HR intervened and said you can't filter your candidates for that, because apprenticeship is designed to be entry level. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that as well, but we had to then refilter to make sure that we weren't discriminating against anybody who didn't have a degree. Luckily, the pool of candidates was not like that anyway. Most people who didn't have a degree didn't meet the essential requirements anyway of the job, so we didn't have to then relook at somebody.
Can I quickly ask a follow-up question on that, John? Did you get the, did they say if that was a specific Norfolk HR apprenticeship policy, or did you get the impression that that's a general rule that you can't specify that you want degree level candidates for apprenticeship?
I have to say it was quite vague when I challenged. I do recall there was some link back to possible issues with the levy fund. If we were setting the barrier too high and not at the very outset considering entry level candidates, but that's as much as I got, and I didn't get anything in writing.
It's certainly the approach that we kind of supported in Southend as well, in that, again, kind of going back to what you were saying about it's the accessibility of an apprenticeship course and wanting to make it open and not unfairly putting barriers in the way of certain applicants. So we followed that approach too at Southend.
I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons. then at Suffolk, I created a new JPP specifically for a 2-year fixed contract for an apprentice. Last year, we took on 3 trainees who did a blended approach. They did the RCO and also started CPCF as well. This year, we've taken on, we've got 2 new vacancies. One's the 2-year fixed term apprenticeship, and the second position is another trainee because one of our original trainees left. The JPP for the apprentice went to HR, and I put that at degree level because I just felt that there was lots of good potential out there that probably because of the situation, were unable to get into, careers. So I put degree, essential, and then desirable law or science based, and that's having a bit of an eye on the fact that even though the job is 2-year fixed term, and obviously they could be released after those 2 years, hopefully with good experience working for us, and also having a great qualification they can take forward. But if in terms of future proofing and resilience, we have kind of people leave or people retire, then if you've got someone that's within the department for 2 years already doing just the RCO, and you create a vacancy, then they're obviously in a good, strong position to go forward and look to a permanent position, and then join up the RCO and carry on with the CPCF. And I suppose it's just different organisations have different HR departments, but the JPP went through fine, and there wasn't. I think I did make a last-minute change in terms of the degree, so it was definitely highlighted. And that went through okay. So yeah, different authorities with different approaches. But I would just sorry, Mark. No, I would just say that the blended approach, because obviously we're here to listen to Mark's presentation, but there's a lot of important people in the room in terms of the region and making those decisions going forward. And it's RCO is new for us. It was new for us last year, and it was a big decision to put our trainees on RCO and CPCF because I thought it was going to be too much work. It's all about, I suppose, getting the right people in that have got the right level of self-motivation, the right level of intelligence and skill set as well. But I've sat down with the 2 trainees that have just completed their first year and said to them, if we could, I have a good relationship with them, so there's a lot of open and honest feedback that's been back and forth over this last year in terms of kind of their learning experience. And I said, if we could start back again in September with everything and I really want your honest opinion, would you take on the RCO as well as the CPCF, or was it sort of just too much? And they both said that they got so much out of the RCO and so much it dovetailed, because I sort of picked out things like duplication, too much work, those sort of key aspects that they needed to consider. And they were so complimentary about the delivery and organisation of the RCO. Some positives around CPCF and in terms of delivery and what have you. And I think things are getting better in terms of that, and they're taking on board a lot of the feedback that everyone's been providing, but specifically we have. And I've noticed some changes in there already this year, moving on to kind of like stage 2. But yeah, lots of compliments about the RCO, and they said that they'd carry on and do a blended approach with doing both of them at the same time, which is really helpful because we've just taken on the apprentice, they haven't joined yet, and the trainee as well, and they're looking to join in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. And that's really helped my decision going forward, because I'm 99% sure I'll go RCO and CPCF for the trainee and just RCO for the apprentice. So yeah, that's where we are. And I was using today's meeting, Mark, as a springboard to get back in contact with you about dates. So yeah, I'll be on the phone in the next couple of days, because I'd like to get our 2 newbies on the RCO, but obviously appreciate that there's a lot of people in the room in the same boat. So if there are benefits in pulling it together a sort of a regional cohort, then I'm all for, you know, supporting that and joining in with everyone. Anyway, that's enough from me.
No, it's just to quickly follow on from your point about the spec for the recruitment and degrees or not. It's all the way across the country. There's been a broad variety of JDs and specifications for the individuals. As you mentioned, Mark, and there's been different requirements from HR. There's different comments and different needs. What we found though is we'll work in conjunction with you. We'll see if it will fit the apprenticeship, and usually it has. And it's worked quite well. So please don't be scared to ask us any questions if people aren't too sure. Just want to double check as well. But we'll be here to help and support. Sorry, Helen, you've had your hand up for a while as well. You on mute though.
Sorry, I was so concentrating on taking my hand down, I forgot to take myself off mute. So yeah, thank you. It was just really to mention we are keen. We've got somebody that we want to enrol at ASAP onto the course. So I guess that would be the September cohort. We had a couple of apprentices on the initial ILGA apprenticeship, and that worked really well. Our apprentice isn't on in the trading standards area, so we haven't got a real requirement to have that that alignment, but always keen to work with the region where we can. I suppose my question is that in terms of the next steps, I think we're just keen because we've got somebody identified that's working for us currently. We need to get on the course. That I guess we register our interest with you directly, Mark, and then we'll just work so we can kind of secure a place for September regardless, and then we can work out what cohort that works within at a later date.
Yeah, we can look at that. So as long as we've got expressions of interest, we compile. So how it works, if everything goes to plan, is that we get the inquiries come in and we go, right, okay, we've got all this, we can schedule the cohorts for this, that and the other, or we can create a cohort based on a group's requirements like we've discussed before. As long as we know the numbers, so Helen, yeah, if you've got the expression of interest in, I could go, right, we've got 5 that could be on the open cohort, and then if we've got 7 or 8 from ITSA who would go down the TS specific route, we'd go, right, we'll create a cohort for that. So you wouldn't be with other ITSAs, you'd be with other employers who were a bit more generic, shall we say. So that there will be options, but the earlier that we know people have got interest, the better really from us, because then we can get the enrolment process in the way and everything as well.
Great, thank you. I said ILGA there, didn't I? ITSA. Yeah, also just in terms of the apprentice perspective, this has been really helpful for us as employers for information that we can provide to apprentices about the course. Obviously there'll be your website and information there. Is there a webinar or anything similar that we could point in their direction? And also, is there kind of pre-reading potentially that you might recommend for somebody who's kind of with us and got some time before they start joining the course?
Well, nothing will be counted towards apprenticeship for any work that's done before apprenticeship starts. To be honest, that would be dependent on the employer. We can't really specify anything. It's the only thing I'd probably say if tutoring was required and they couldn't provide the proof, maybe just do a little bit of revision in maths and English before any tutoring started. But with regards to anything related to the apprenticeship, it's a bit too difficult to say, in all honesty. With regards to your point about webinars and presentations, we are looking at setting up some sort of videos with regards to going through this, but if they aren't done, I'd be quite happy to do. We've done things for apprentices before, similar to this, and had a tutor involved, so they can go through the day-to-day stuff a bit more, rather than the high-level stuff that I've just gone through. And we'd be happy to organise that. I know we did that for Mark for their learners that came on board and started, and we've done it for other employers as well. So that wouldn't be an issue. If you just wanted to, if you've got people who are interested, we can schedule something in. That's fine.
Great, thank you. In the meantime, I guess all of the collateral, the marketing stuff's on the website.
Everything's on the website. So CSA-UK.com. If you go into across the top, there's apprenticeships is one of the titles. Just click on that. That will cover everything, all the apprenticeships that we provide. So if you've got any departments that have any other requirements for the other ones we provide as well, please point them in my direction too. But yeah, there's stuff about the level 4 that a lot of the testimonials that are on there from level 4 employers, level 4 RCO employers as well. So there's some stuff on there that could help and support as well. There's the brochures there. If you want the delivery plan as well, don't think that's on there, but I can provide that if people want that too.
Thank you.
I think just to say as well, Helen, what the feedback I've got after joining ETA has been that it would be really helpful to have a shared space within the region where apprentices and line managers of apprentices can have a discussion about any potential pitfalls they've found or any really helpful information that they've come across. And what I'll be trying to do is bring that together in exactly what format. I'm still working on it, and it will definitely be a process of trial and error. But I'm hoping that by the time the cohorts start in September, we'll have an area online where trainees and apprentices can talk to each other, and any information that is available from the CSA, from trading standards, from CCSI, sorry, we'll be able to signpost it and kind of keep it all together in a way that's useful for people going through the process. So I will make that information available as soon as I can, but hopefully that'll be like an additional resource that assists with learning and communication.
Thanks.
Any other questions for anyone? Because I appreciate we're sort of at the end of our allotted time. I mean, I'm also happy to receive emails from people. So if anyone needs to contact me, Ben, please feel free to give out my email to people if they don't have it already. I'm happy with that. Also, anyone who couldn't attend today as well, please drop me a line. I'll happily answer. If you want to ring as well, I'll give my number out. That's not a problem too. So it's we're here to help. We're here to support. Please get in touch if you need any info.
That's brilliant, Mark. Thank you very much for coming along today and doing this this presentation. It's been really informative, and thanks also for making the recording as well. Speak to you afterwards, and hopefully we can share that with anyone else who might have wanted to attend but was unable for whatever reason. But yeah, thank you. It's been really, really helpful.
No problem at all. Nice to meet everyone. Nice to see everyone, and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank
Sorry
you, Mark.
to get the music in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.